Hey there, this is Elena with Black Sheep 303 Creative, and today I'm going to show you how to cut vinyl on your Silhouette Cameo 4 to make these cute and super easy Scandinavian-style ornaments. So I'm in Silhouette Studio here, and I'm going to open the files that I downloaded from a site called creativefabrica.com. You get 40 snowflake files for $4. I will link to that file in the video description and over on my blog if you're interested. But I just went over to File Open, and I'm looking for the first snowflake, which I know is snowflake number 25, and they nicely each come in their own folder, which is very nice for this collection. That's not always the case. So you do get a DXF, an EPS, a PNG, and a SVG file with this collection. So I'm going to open the DXF file because that is what you can use in the basic version of Silhouette Studio. But if you have the designer edition or higher, you can open the SVG file. And that is also what you would use for Brother Canvas or Cricut Design Studio if you're using either of those machines. And I would suggest that because the SVG is a little bit easier to work with than the DXF file, but we're going to look at the DXF file here just so anybody who only has the basic version of Silhouette Studio can follow along. So I'm going to click on the DXF file and hit OK. And so that will open the first snowflake onto our mat here. Now this is a lot of tiny little pieces, so I'm going to click and drag to select the whole thing and then go up to the top toolbar and hit the group button to group the whole thing together. And then I'm just going to pull it off to the side so we can open the second snowflake. So I'm going to go to File, Merge this time. Instead of Open, it's Merge. And I'm going to navigate to where I have the second one I'm going to use, which is snowflake number 32. So again, I will pick the DXF file and hit OK, and then that will bring the file into the same workspace. If you just hit File Open, what's going to happen is it will open a second tab, like up in the upper left corner. You'll see there's like an Untitled tab and a Snowflake 25 tab. It'll open a third tab that would say like Snowflake 32 probably. And so you'd have to go into that tab and click and drag over the whole thing like I just did there to select it, and then go to Edit, Copy, then go back to Snowflake 25 and then Edit, Paste, which is pretty easy too. But File Merge is just kind of quicker. Now I grouped that together as well, and now I'm going over and making sure that my aspect ratio is locked. When you first open the files, the aspect ratio is unlocked, and so I'm locking it to make sure that when we resize these, the proportions don't change. So I'm going to grab the corner handle and just click and drag in to shrink these snowflakes down, because obviously they don't need to be the size of the entire mat. That's way too big. My ornaments are they're like 3.5 by 3.5 inch wood stars. And I measured them, and I know that I need about a 2 by 2 inch design to fit into the centers of them nicely. But first we got to do a little fix. So you might notice that the snowflake on the left is, I don't know, thinner than the snowflake on the right. The snowflake on the right, its arms are a little bit fatter, wider, whatever you want to say, than the one on the left. So for the left, we got to offset it a little bit to fix that. So that's the star button on the top. There's also a version on the right. When you click on it, it brings up the little offset panel there on the right, and it also adds this weird puffy border all around the snowflake. Now that border would be like a shadow layer normally, but we don't want it that big. So I'm going to go to the little measurement box and click down on it to shrink that outline until I'm down to about 0.05, because that's about what we need to make it just a little bit fatter. We don't want it a lot fatter. Now with the DXF file, things get a little bit complicated at this point, because normally what you would do is you could just weld it together, and that would make the border and the original shape like come together. However, because this is a bunch of tiny little, like the openings are all separate shapes, when we weld it, it does that, like it goes solid, and that's not what we want. So I'm going to undo that, And so what I have to do is I have to click and like select the entire thing and then ungroup it. And then I'm going to click off of it again. And then I need to select just the outline layer, the outset that we just added. So this is a little tricky. Could zoom in more, but you know. And then I'm going to click the main snowflake shape that is right next to it. There you go. So it's two real skinny boxes. You'll know you've got them both when you have two boxes. And then we can hit weld up here on the top. And so that will weld the main shape to that outline while leaving the like cutout shapes in place. And then we want to select them all and group them together again. If you use the SVG file, you will not have to do that extra step. You can just add the outset and then weld it. For whatever reason, that will keep the openings as is. But the DXF file does not, so just be aware of that. Now I'm resizing these down. I knew that I had about a 2" by 2" space on my ornaments, so the height is bigger than the width, so I've changed the width down to 1.8, and that takes the height down to just like a little bit over 2, and that's okay. So I'm going to do the same thing on the second snowflake, change the width down to 1.8, and they are good to go for our ornaments. So now I'm just going to move them up to the upper left corner so I know where to put my vinyl on my sheet or on my mat. Now, because these are a pretty small project, I'm just going to cut a little piece of vinyl and put it on a mat. You can cut vinyl without a mat using the roll feeder, or not even the roll feeder. You just feed a piece of vinyl into the machine and not use a mat. But because this is so small, I just decided that was probably more effort than it was worth, and I was just going to figure out, like, just cut a little piece. So I know by counting my boxes here on my mat that I need about 5, that my piece of vinyl needs to be about 5 inches wide and about 3 inches tall. Each of those tiny grid lines is a 1/4 inch, and the thicker gray lines are 1/2 inch. So I can figure out my dimensions from that, and we are ready to go with the design. So I've got my little piece of vinyl over here on my regular Cameo mat, and you can see it's 5 by 3. This is Oracal Glossy White adhesive permanent vinyl, and I'm lining up my mat on the left hand side by those gray arrows and under the wheels, and then feeding it in. And now we're going to go back to Silhouette Studio, and now we are in the Send tab. So if you see up on the upper right, Send is highlighted. Before we were in the Design tab. Now my setting for this is Vinyl Metallic Oracal 651. Now this is a custom setting that I created myself. It doesn't apply to, when I did it originally it was for metallics, but really it works on any kind of Oracal 651. So I'm going to take off the metallic eventually. But I got these settings from expressionsvinyl.com. So the auto blade sort of sets to 2, and then the force is 5, and the speed is 7. And Expressions Vinyl has like a really nice chart of all the good settings for your Silhouette Cameo and all the other machines. So I'll link to that in the video description as well, and on my blog post, because it's a really good reference if you're kind of stumped on what to set your blade to cut vinyl well. So then I just hit send, and it goes over to the machine, and the machine starts cutting. So I sped this up quite a bit because, you know, it's a little boring to watch it cut the whole thing. But it didn't take long, like maybe max, I'm guessing 2 minutes, like not long at all. So once it's done, I'm just going to unload the mat. It's pretty tough to see the cut lines on the white vinyl, but I'm going to flip the mat over and peel the vinyl off the mat. Well, peel the mat really off the vinyl so that the vinyl doesn't get bent or curled. And then I'm just going to stick the vinyl down to my paper transfer tape here. So it's vinyl side down onto the transfer tape, just trimming off the extra. Then I'm using my little squeegee here to really burnish it down well. And now I've peeled the back off of the vinyl. The other side has the transfer tape on it. And I'm going to use the backing to keep my hands from sticking to the vinyl. And now I'm going to just weed out the design with my tiny tweezers that I use for everything. And this is the most boring part of any vinyl project and sometimes the most difficult part as well. Some of these tiny little pieces in this get a little tricky to remove, but you know, eventually you can do it, and it didn't take that long. And you can see I'm doing what is called reverse weeding, so I'm leaving the design on the transfer tape and peeling the vinyl off rather than peeling the vinyl off first and then putting the transfer tape on. I just thought this would be the easier way to go, especially with these kind of intricate shapes. And it was, you know, worked pretty well. Not too bad at all. Could have used some clear transfer tape. That probably would have been smarter. But, you know, you can still see through this. But you'll see here in a minute why this wasn't maybe the smartest move. So I'm lining this up on my ornament. So there's my wood ornament. It's unfinished wood. It's just plain. And I'm trying to center it in the middle of the star, and then I'm just pressing it down onto the star because it's obviously adhesive and it sticks, and I'm using my squeegee to rub it, burnish it down real well, and then peeling the transfer tape off very slowly. I have sped this up a little bit. And you can see I was off a little bit, not quite in the center, but hey, you know, handmade, it is what it is. Now this one I got a little smarter. I trimmed the transfer tape down a bit so I could see where the point of the star was, so I could center it a little bit better. But then, so same deal, I just pressed it down, burnished it with the squeegee, and peeled the transfer tape off, and they are on there. And so to finish it off, I just added some tonic Nuvo glitter drops. This is Emerald City, so I did each of the 5 points and then in the center, and added a bow to the top, and then the other one is Ruby Slippers, the red, so again on all 5 points and in the center. And those little tiny bows I made out of ribbon and glued them on with some art glitter glue. You could also use hot glue as well. And those are the completed ornaments, so really, really simple. And I'll tell you, I checked those Nuvo glitter drops, they stick on there. You can get them off if you scrape pretty hard, but you would really have to try hard to get those off. So they do stick. So I hope you like that. Scandinavian style ornaments are pretty on trend this year, and that's kind of the look I'm going for on my tree. So I wanted to try something out with vinyl and see how that went, and it was pretty darn easy. Hope you think so, and I hope you'll try it yourself. Thanks so much for watching. As I mentioned, supplies are linked in the video description and over my blog. If you liked the video, I'd really appreciate it if you give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment, because I love hearing from you, and that helps my channel out quite a bit. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please do that as well, because I always welcome new people. Thanks so much, and happy holidays, everybody!